Hey, it's you. I have recently returned from living in Chile for 6 weeks, and I thought I would come and talk about some of my experiences there, some of my favorite things about Chileans and the Chilean culture. And none of this is by any means to define the country as a whole, to say that any of my observations and my experiences in Chile are representative of the country and the people. These are just my thoughts and the things that stuck out for me. I want to start off strong here with completos. Completos are basically Chilean hot dogs. They blow our traditional American hot dogs out of the water, and there were so many vegetarian options, I couldn't believe it. What it is, essentially, is a hot dog in a traditional hot dog bun, and the classic one is the Italian completo. It is made with like a very mashed avocado, but not guac. Just very mashed avocado, mayonnaise, and tomatoes. Why is that Italian, you ask? Well, look at the flag. Brilliant. I love Chileans. Of course, you can also add all sorts of other things to it. My friend Fenya, who is Chilean, that I made friends with in Patagonia, told me that basically the goal of a completo is just to put on as many sauces as you can. It's a very saucy hot dog. In a similar vein, I was introduced to the dish chorianas. It is South American poutine. I had, of course, the vegetarian option. So what it is like a big pile of fries and like a big helping of stir-fry mixed veggies and an egg or two on top. Delicious. Some really great food that I wish we would introduce here. As a vegetarian, genuinely, I did not struggle ever to find food. And actually, might I add that every grocery store veggie burger I purchased was delicious. People tell you South America is hard if you don't eat meat. I found it very easy, and every meal I had was amazing. In addition to the delicious food, Pisco. Now, Pisco, I was not familiar with your game prior to entering Chile. And then it was everywhere. Immediately everywhere. And, as it should be, I understand, it's amazing. I am not a fan of most alcohol. I don't like being able to taste the alcohol in a drink. But a Pisco sour, hell, a Piscola, Chile. You've been gatekeeping. But anybody out there that is like a bartender or cares about drinks, if you haven't met Pisco yet, I encourage you to get acquainted. Something I just loved was that Chile was both the end of the world and the hottest place you can possibly go. It has both. Maybe that's why they shaped it so funny. So I enjoyed my experience in the south in Patagonia. It was cold. You're very, very close to Antarctica. It was cold. I didn't go all the way south. The lowest I went was Puerto Natales. But I met people that were going like maybe 2 hours south, and there's like penguin tours because you're right there. It's freezing cold, and that's one of the reasons it's kind of in areas maybe not so appealing to go swimming in Chile, because the water is pushing up from Antarctica and it is very cold for swimming. Of course, I live on one of the Great Lakes. I am familiar with swimming in very cold water. I start swimming in the lakes usually around this time or May, which is the coldest time of year because the ice has just melted. All of this to say, I'm not afraid to swim in cold water, but it was very, very cold in Chile. The concept of being both the end of the world and, I believe, the north in the Atacama is like one of the hottest places in the world, or the sun is the strongest in the world in the Atacama Desert. Fact check me, but I believe that's correct, and I'm inclined to believe this because coming from Canada, I have never in my life seen the UV index at more than a 9. In fact, I thought the absolute highest it went was a 10. Would you believe me if I said the first day we got there, I checked the UV index and it was 16, and yet none of our crew got sunburned. We were very diligent with sunscreen. We spent a small fortune on it, absolutely. Speaking of the Atacama Desert, it had the most beautiful sunsets I have seen in my time in South America. It was just stunning. There had just been, in particular, this one right after like this massive rainstorm that was really beautiful to watch. I was told by a local that it actually hadn't rained in any substantial amount in 7 years. Post this first storm, it produced the most beautiful orange sorbet sunset I've ever seen. And I think about it often. I can't think of many other sunsets I've seen in my life that compare to it. There was so much to love about San Pedro. We went to the Moon Valley, of course, was stunning. We decided to bike it rather than do the bus tours, which I think we were crazy for. I understand why everybody else did the bus tour and we saw nobody else on bikes. Solar noon, 22 kilometers up and down in the heat is tough. Looking back, I genuinely wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It was amazing. It was challenging, but I was with my friends, and it was really cool to get to stop wherever we wanted to see things from a different point of view, rather than the few, 6 stopping points that you hit on one of the guided tours. I do have a video on the Atacama if you care to check it out. I had an epic wipeout. I cut my arm open on a crystal of salt that has resulted in a very cool scar. It's pretty cool. We also visited a salt lake. I didn't really expect to find that there, but it was set before a volcano, and we just got to go in and just float. It was amazing, especially because my arm was all bandaged up. It was no effort at all to be in the water like this for half an hour. It was amazing. It was very fun to just feel weightless and float. And we also saw flamingos there. We saw one fly overhead that was pink, and then we saw maybe 3 others with my binoculars that were white. And I reckon that's because there's not really shrimp around for them to eat. I believe that's why flamingos are pink. It was amazing to see because I've never seen a flamingo in the wild before. Now, something I really loved about Chile that was particularly prominent in the Atacama Desert was the stars. There are so many stars in Chile. A friend told me, and I don't know how much this is true, I believed him wholeheartedly without asking questions, that the stars are so dense in Chile that the constellations are actually the emptiness in the sky, not the connecting of the stars, but the blackness, the emptiness, probably back in the day when there was no light pollution. But we went on a star tour in the Atacama, and it was amazing. They pointed out to us remnants of an old galaxy, if you can believe that. It just looks like a cloud in the sky, but it was really cool. It's not something I ever would have thought you even could have seen. But even outside of the desert, the stars were amazing everywhere. Where my friends lived, it was beautiful. It was really impressive. Now, I am a graveyard tourist. I love cemeteries, and I always have. And in every city I go to, or at the very least every country I go to, I visit a cemetery. And when I tell you, Santiago has the most incredible cemetery I have ever seen, you best believe I mean it. It had art in the entryway, like the Vatican, and then the mausoleums themselves were intricate and massive and beautiful. And something I really love about South America is that all of the cemeteries, or at least the really big ones that I visited, are all mausoleums. You don't really get that here in North America. You mostly get gravestones and people in there in the dirt, but it was all row after row after row of mausoleums, and it was really beautiful and very interesting to see and think about. I do love the idea of being eternally resting with your family. That is a very beautiful idea to me. So I absolutely loved the Santiago Cemetery. If you love graveyards, definitely go. If you don't love graveyards and you just love beautiful architecture and culture, definitely go. I easily could have spent hours there. Unfortunately, we were on a bit of a time crunch, so I only had about 1 hour, but I wish I could have spent an entire day there. I cannot recommend it enough. Now, this next one, I feel the locals may disagree with me, but as a visitor who doesn't have to deal with it at all times, I loved the street dogs. There were street dogs everywhere. All the ones I encountered at least were very sweet. Pet them, they often followed you around. I had one sit in a bus stop with me for 2 hours while I was waiting for my bus to show up. I really liked them. A lot of them seem very well cared for, and maybe that's because the community comes together for them, or they do belong to someone and they just spend their days in the streets. I'm not sure, but all the ones I encountered were very lovely. They're all very cute, and I'm sure if you have to live there with them all the time, they can be something of a nuisance, perhaps like raccoons are here in Canada. But as a visitor who loves dogs and can't have a dog right now, I loved being surrounded by them at all times. Next, and I didn't know this place existed until I got to Chile, is a city called Valparaíso. It is made up of, I believe, 42 neighborhoods, and every neighborhood is on a different hill. It is great for getting a workout in. The whole place is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's all protected, and it's just like buildings stacked on top of each other. It very much reminded me of Cinque Terre in Italy, but if it were in Latin America. I got to go on this, it was like an elevator that went up a hill, one of the particularly steep hills, so you didn't have to walk up it, and I'll have to look up what it's called, but that was a really fun experience for me. I think it's probably just a part of daily life there, but I thought it was fun and something I'd never seen before. Also, the street art there, the graffiti, was really amazing. I saw some really, really cool murals, and there was a lot of activism in it too, which I really appreciated. You couldn't look anywhere without picking something up. Oh, I almost forgot about this. I went back there maybe a month later with my partner, and I said, hey, that bird poop looks like an ant. He goes, no, that is an ant. And we looked, and these little white ants, maybe this big, were painted all over the sidewalk, and we followed where the ants were going for like 20 minutes, and it led us to a candy shop. If you are ever there, I encourage you to find the ants and follow them, and not just to go straight to the candy shop. It was kind of like a fun adventure we were on. It was a really cute way to spend the day. I also spent my birthday in Valparaiso. Here's one thing to know about me is I have a birthday curse. On my 24th birthday last year, I was threatened with a bun. This year, Valparaiso caught on fire. This is not funny. This is something that devastates this city. I believe it was, I'm not sure how many years ago now, in at least the recent history, that there was a massive fire there that killed, I think, over 100 people. This is a big problem in South America. And something else I learned is that being a firefighter in Chile particularly is maybe the most respected job a person can hold, but it's not really a paid job. They all do it because they want to, and they feel that need to protect and serve their country in that way. All of this to say that it did just feel like Murphy's Law that the place I went to on my birthday would catch on fire. There were evacuation sirens going for probably 2 hours, maybe 3 hours. And actually, we all had to turn our phones off because we were getting the non-stop emergency messages that we were to evacuate the area. I was inclined to evacuate. However, I was with my Chilean friends who said there's no need. And though it felt immensely like there was a need, we didn't leave, and eventually it all stopped and they got it under control, thank God, and everything was fine. But it's really fun to be in a bar where you don't know very much Spanish at all, and trying to communicate with someone in my broken Spanish and their broken English, and there's sirens going the whole time. Again, I was never upset about it. It was almost funny to me because, again, I have a birthday curse. Overall, I found the Chilean people to be very kind and very welcoming. I think they speak way too fast. I think their vernacular and mannerisms are awesome. I love Sipo. I didn't hear it anywhere else I went, so I thought that was pretty cool. And they're also funny in English, not their first language. In English, they were very funny. Even if they didn't know very much English, they were funny, and they were making jokes that I genuinely laughed at. Being funny in a foreign language is such a skill, and nobody was offended when I tried to speak Spanish and they couldn't understand me because probably closer to gibberish than Spanish. And everyone was very open to, and we would both laugh about if we were communicating on our phones over Google Translate. Because I've been to some places where I don't speak the language, and when I try to speak their language or when I use Google Translate, they're not happy about it. They're not welcoming about it. Whereas in Chile, it was like we were both laughing about it and it was no problem. In my next video, I will be talking about my experiences in Argentina. And as I'm not sure where to put this part, I'm gonna put it in both, maybe. The bus ride from Santiago to Mendoza is so beautiful. I think it was 8 hours, and I am so glad that I did it. It was truly stunning. And I guess actually that's one more thing I want to say about South America as a whole. Your buses. I don't know about city buses, but the long haul buses are so nice. I took an overnight bus and it was so comfortable and I had a great sleep. Everyone is very helpful. Air conditioning, sockets, some of them had Wi-Fi, massive seats, very comfy. Though there is one question I have for Chileans. It might be a cultural thing. I could not wrap my mind around what this was about. If I was on a bus or on a public bench and all the other seats were open, okay, all the other benches were open, they would come and sit right next to me, like in the actual seat right next to me, when everything else was open. If you know what this is about, let me know. I'm not mad. I was just curious if there's a reason that happens in Chile, because it didn't happen to me in Argentina, but it happened to me so many times in Chile. Not a hater, just curious. So that is my experience in Chile. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. So Chile is a 2 thumbs up for me. Definitely go if that's something you're looking to do. And don't just go to Patagonia. Chile is so much more than that. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if it moves ya, and I'll see you in the next one.